True prosperity follows these hidden principles. The real meaning of prosperity. Imagine it is March 19th, 1497. We are in Lisbon, Portugal. It is the first day of Passover, a day that should be filled with tradition, family, and history. Instead, the streets are filled with screams. This isn't a battle, it is something far more sinister. King Manuel the Fern has made a deal with the devil, or rather, a deal for a marriage. He wants to marry Princess Isabel of Spain, but she has one non-negotiable condition: get rid of the Jews. But Manuel is greedy. He knows the Jewish community holds the keys to navigation, banking, and trade. He doesn't want them to leave. He wants their minds and their money, just not their religion. So he orders his soldiers to do the unthinkable. They rip children, 4,000 of them, aged 4 to 14, right out of their mother's arms. Can you imagine the sound of that city? Mothers clinging to their babies, fathers beaten back by armored guards. These children were dragged to the font for forced baptism. Most of those parents never saw their children again. It was a kidnapping on a national scale, designed to break the spirit of a people. Fast forward to October of that same year. The king's plan enters phase 2. He announces that anyone who refuses to convert can leave peacefully. 20,000 people gather at the port of Lisbon, suitcases packed, tickets bought, ready to sail away to freedom. But it was a trap, a cruel, calculated trap. When they arrived at the docks, only 8, yes, just 8 people were allowed to board ships. The other 92 were herded like cattle into a building called the Palace of Estaus. They were locked inside for 3 days. No food, no water, just darkness and the ultimatum: convert or die. Adi, when you are dehydrated, starving, and terrified, the human spirit is tested. 99% of them submitted. They accepted the water of baptism on their foreheads. On paper, they were now new Christians. The king had won, or so he thought. Here is where the story gets incredible. On the surface, these people went to church. They changed their names to Silva, Costa, Pereira. They ate pork in public. But when Friday night came, the doors were locked. The heavy curtains were drawn. Down in the basements, deep underground, where the king's spies couldn't see, a different reality existed. They would cover the mirrors. They would light 2 candles, shielding the flame with their bodies so the light wouldn't escape through the cracks in the floorboards. They whispered ancient prayers in Hebrew, a language now forbidden by death. For 500 years, half a millennium, they lived a double life. They were the crypto Jews, living a lie to protect the truth. And here is the thing. Usually, when people are persecuted, crushed, and taxed into oblivion, they collapse into poverty. But these people, they didn't just survive. They became the wealthiest group in the world. If you want to uncover more lost history and the secrets of wealth that they don't teach in school, make sure to follow the Solomon's Treasury channel right now. You won't want to miss what comes next. It defies all economic logic. How do you build an empire when the government can confiscate your property at any moment? How do you focus on compound interest when you might be burned at the stake next Tuesday? The Portuguese Inquisition burned 1,175 people alive. They tortured over 30,000. They seized fortunes, destroyed estates, and erased lineages. Yet despite this absolute terror, the crypto Jews were financing the Age of Discovery. They were the ones backing the ships sailing to India and the Americas. In Spain, they controlled the spice trade. In the colonies, they dominated the sugar industry. It's a paradox. The more the world tried to crush them, the more gold they seemed to generate. It wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was a system. Let's look at the figures who shaped the Western world. You have probably heard of Fernando de Noronha. He wasn't just a guy with an island named after him. He was a crypto Jew who literally financed the discovery and development of Brazil in 1502. He built the first sugar mill in 1516. He was making massive industrial moves while looking over his shoulder for the Inquisition agents. Then there was Branca Diaz. She ran a massive sugar plantation. On the surface, a compliant businesswoman. In secret, she maintained 9 underground synagogues. She was denounced, arrested, and tortured. She survived and went right back to building her empire. These weren't just survivors, they were titans of industry operating in the shadows. They were building the economic foundations of the Americas while the old world tried to burn them down. So, the big question is, how? How did they do it? When your physical assets can be seized, you realize that true wealth cannot be physical. If you buy a house, the king can take it. If you stack gold, the soldiers can steal it. The crypto-Jews realized they needed a form of wealth that was portable, invisible, and indestructible. They stopped relying on things and started relying on a code, a set of principles derived from the Talmud and ancient wisdom. These weren't religious rituals, they were financial and psychological algorithms. Because they couldn't write them down, paper is dangerous evidence. They passed them orally, father to son, mother to daughter, whispered in the dark. Now I know what you're thinking. If they were hiding for 500 years, how do we know what these principles were? And more importantly, if they worked during the Inquisition, could they possibly work in our economy today? Drop a comment below with your guess on what their #1 secret was. Imagine growing up in a house where you can't tell your best friend who you really are. That was the reality for generations. The transmission of this knowledge had to be incredibly efficient. They didn't have time for long lectures. They used codes. They used metaphors. The education of a crypto-Jewish child didn't start with how to make money. It started with how to think. They taught their children that money is neutral energy. It's not good, it's not bad. It's a tool. While the outside world was often taught that poverty was a virtue, inside those basements they were teaching that poverty was a vulnerability. To survive the fire, you needed resources. Wealth became a spiritual duty, a shield to protect the family. This secret curriculum revolved around 5 core principles. We're going to dig into them, but you have to understand the framework first. The modern world tells us, make money, then spend it, then save what's left. The code reversed everything. The first principle dealt with the flow of energy, giving before you receive. The second principle dealt with risk management, never having all your eggs in one basket, centuries before modern portfolio theory existed. The third principle was about the intangible, reputation and the word. They built networks of trust that spanned oceans. A handshake in Lisbon could move gold in Amsterdam because the code bound them together. Think about this. The greatest act of rebellion against a tyrant who wants to destroy you is to succeed. Every coin they earned was a victory. Every ship they launched was a middle finger to the Inquisition. This mindset shift is crucial. Most people try to get rich to buy things, a nice horse, a castle, or today a Lambo. These families got rich to buy life, to buy influence, to buy safety. When your why is survival and the protection of your heritage, your motivation is infinite. You don't get tired, you don't get lazy. You possess a relentless drive that the average merchant just doesn't have. This history feels distant, right? Knights, castles, wooden ships. Does this actually translate to the world of the IRS, the stock market and digital currency? Or is it just a nice history lesson? What do you think? Let's bring this home. I want to tell you a story that isn't from 1497, but from the last century. It follows the exact same pattern. This is the story of a man named Ronnie, but it starts with his father. Ronnie's father didn't flee the Portuguese Inquisition. He fled the Holocaust. He ran from the Nazis in Europe, escaping with nothing but the clothes on his back, trauma in his heart, and this ancient code in his mind. Ronnie's mother, she was kicked out of Egypt. The Egyptian government confiscated everything her family owned. Houses, jewelry, bank accounts, gone overnight. 2 refugees, no passport, no homeland, no money. They met and eventually made their way to the land of opportunity. the United States of America. They didn't land in a penthouse. They landed in a gritty, tough neighborhood. Let's say a cramped walk-up in the Bronx or a rough patch of South Philly. The American dream sounds nice in movies, but the reality is brutal. There were days when putting food on the table was a genuine puzzle. They were strangers in a strange land. They spoke with accents. They were outsiders, just like the crypto Jews in Lisbon. The neighbors might have seen a struggling immigrant family, maybe pitied them. But they didn't know what was happening inside that small apartment. They didn't know that every night the father was teaching the son the same principles that Branca Diaz used to run her sugar mills. Have you ever been at zero? I mean absolute zero, where you look at your bank account and it's empty, and you look at your prospects and they seem bleak. That is where Ronnie's family started. But the code says that your bank account is a lagging indicator. Your mindset is a leading indicator. They didn't look at their poverty and see a tragedy. They saw a starting line. They applied the principles of the Talmud not as religious rites, but as business strategies. They were disciplined. They were quiet. They were playing the long game in a world that is addicted to shortcuts. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you were dropped in a foreign country today with $0, no phone, and no contacts, could you build a fortune? What is the one skill you would rely on to survive? Tell me in the comments. So, what happened to that family in the cramped apartment? They started applying the code, slowly, methodically. It started with a small business, maybe a corner store, a textile hustle, or repairing electronics. It doesn't matter what the business was. It matters how they ran it. They treated every customer like a partner. They managed every dollar with the precision of a surgeon. They lived well below their means, not because they were stingy, but because they were building that invisible fortress of capital. While others were buying new cars on credit to look rich, they were buying assets to be rich. Years passed. The cramped apartment became a house in the suburbs. The struggle for food became Sunday barbecues with abundance. Ronnie grew up watching his parents transform from fearful refugees into pillars of their community. They moved from survival mode to contribution mode. They started helping others. They became the people you go to when you need a loan or advice or a job. They replicated the success of the crypto Jews. They didn't just climb the ladder, they built an elevator and sent it back down for others. Eventually, the family achieved their ultimate dream, moving to Jerusalem, not as refugees running away, but as wealthy, sovereign individuals choosing their destiny. This is the power of the prosperity code. It took a family from needing help to giving help in one generation. Ronnie, now a rabbi and a teacher, looked at his own life and realized, I didn't get here because I'm a genius. I got here because I have a cheat sheet. He realized that these principles, the ones that saved his ancestors from the Inquisition and his parents from the Holocaust, were too valuable to keep secret. For 500 years, the rule was shut up and survive. But now, in a free world, the rule should be speak up and thrive. We are about to open the vault. In the next chapter, I'm going to reveal the philosophy behind these principles. But first, I have to ask, if you learned a secret that generated millions for your family, would you share it with the world? Or would you keep it exclusively for your children? Be honest. Okay? Let's get into the mechanics. What is the first principle that Ronnie's father and the crypto Jews before him practiced religiously? It's about the order of operations. Most people earn, spend, and save. The code says earn, give, save, spend. It sounds crazy. Give! I'm broke! The code teaches that charity, tzedakah, isn't just being nice. It's a flow mechanism. It trains your brain that you are a source of abundance, not a sinkhole of scarcity. Even in the concentration camps, or in the starving basements of Lisbon, they would share their last crumb of bread. Why? Because the moment you give, you declare to the universe and to your own subconscious, that you have more than enough. It breaks the psychological chains of poverty. The second principle is about how you view safety. The modern world says get a safe job. The code says safety is an illusion. The only real safety is diversification and control. The crypto Jews were masters of being everywhere and nowhere. They never kept their wealth in one currency or one country. Today, that translates to not having just one income stream. If you rely on one paycheck, you are one bad meeting away from ruin. That is not freedom, that is fragile. The code demands that you build systems that can survive a crash, a crisis, or a king who wakes up in a bad mood. Finally, we arrive at the core truth. What is the prosperity code really about? It's not about a number on a screen. Ronnie's family went from nil to abundance to realize one thing: wealth is the ability to choose. It's the ability to wake up in the morning and say no to what you hate and yes to what you love. It's the power to protect your children from the cruelty of the world. It's the capacity to be a blessing to your neighbor. For 500 years, they hid in the dark so that today we could stand in the light. The fire of the Inquisition couldn't burn these ideas. The poverty of the immigrant experience couldn't starve these ideas. They are anti-fragile, and now they are yours. The door to the treasury is open. You don't have to hide in a basement anymore. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. If you found value in this journey through history and wealth, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, leave a comment about which part of the story shocked you the most, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. This is Solomon's Treasury, signing off.